Okay, live here on Facebook. Hopefully the audio is working properly, and it's interesting. I titled this one "Being Loving and Positive at All Times," and instantaneously, almost for the first time in a long time since these Facebook Lives started working effectively directly through Facebook, because normally I've had to do them through Zoom and then now it started working. I don't know if there was an issue where it was not picking up the camera though for some reason. And then the past couple weeks it's been working just fine. And then for the first time it was set up, and then I was about to go live and I was making sure the microphone worked, and then the camera stopped working. And I think I see why that happened. But why is that interesting? Um, I find that interesting because I was titling this "Being Loving and Positive at All Times." And I was going to title it potentially "How to Be Loving and Positive at All Times," but that's a full training that's inside the Voice to Spirit group. So I'm not talking about how to be loving and positive at all times, because that is an in-depth training process, and I would be doing a complete disservice to purporting that in a simple video like this. But the concept of being loving and positive at all times is certainly relevant for conversation. And if you think about the power of love, whether you're religious or spiritual or none of the above, we all can identify with the power of love. Now, most of us identify with the power of love as being, I was looking at admiring the flowers there, the power of love. And the power of love is not something of the world. It's not what A Course in Miracles calls it special love, when you love one person in particular, but that love is an equal, and then it contradicts it, or not contradicts it, it mirrors it with special hate, where there's people that you especially hate or dislike or want to avoid. And the end goal here, from a spiritual perspective, is to have everything from kind of a neutral point. But it's not really a neutral point, it's more of a balanced point. And balance simply means unconditional love, meaning you have equal love for all beings, all things, animate and inanimate, because we're all dream figures here according to A Course in Miracles. So there's no distinction, but that's kind of an advanced thing to be talking about here. So I won't spend a lot of time on it because it's not entirely relevant to the message today. The real message today is when we can decide that we're going to be loving and positive despite our circumstances in life. That's really what opens the doors to the solution. And if you think about it right now, when you're negative, when you beat yourself up, or when you judge the other person, and by beat yourself up I mean with your thoughts, with your emotions, hold on to grudges, when we hold things against our fellow humans, and it might seem totally justified in the level of form, it might seem totally justified that there's reasons to hold injustices towards others, whether it's political, whether it's a country thing, a national thing. I mean, it's always political to a degree, whether it's religious, but think about that. Does that solve anything? Like, think about Gandhi, right? I mean, a movement fought without, it wasn't fought, there was no fight on the side of, and I'm no expert in this, so I'm just using it as a general example that we can all relate to. But Gandhi, super high vibrating guy, super high frequency, super high evolution in his consciousness of spirituality, of the human spirit, if you want to use that terminology. And he discovered a way through non-force, non-violence, peace only, to exact change. So if you think about how do we actually reach solutions, like think about your own life. When you got your best ideas, when you got your best results, were you more loving and positive, or were you negative, detached, separate, coming from a place of righteousness, etc.? I think you get the idea. So if you want to solve any problems on a personal level or a global level, we have to approach it from a place of being loving and positive. And we're not approving of people's behavior. That's not what I'm talking about here, right? Because that's the key paradox in spirituality is people get confused. They think these people are taking certain actions, therefore they're wrong, therefore they should be punished or whatever. And that may or may not be true. There's certainly behavior that's inappropriate and therefore should be dealt with. But the same behavior can be viewed from a place of negativity where that person's wrong, therefore I'm going to judge them. But then think about that. Does that feel good for you? But the contradiction in our beliefs is that, well, if I don't project my hatred onto them, if I don't project my judgment onto them, then they might get away, might get away with murder, so to speak. And other things that are extreme and things that are not so extreme. Someone just cuts us off in traffic, for example. And, that can be like, raise a whole bunch of thoughts about, the injustice of it and what's wrong with this person, etc. And then if you think about that, is that helpful? Is that helpful to you, right? When you hold those judgments and those grievances towards the person that's in front of you that cut you off or what have you, does that help you? Does it help your body and your mind? Does it help you relax? Right? It doesn't do anything, right? It's I'll just use the word stupid, and I'm using that intentionally because here, let's see this. Thank you, Rendy. Yeah, nice. Thanks. That's great. Thank you, brother. Rendy's a great guy from Singapore. I had the privilege of connecting with him not too long ago, days ago, and we had a lot of synchronicity, a lot of similar vibes, and he's got a great, wonderful business where he's helping people evolve on his side of the planet and internationally, thanks to the power of the internet. And if we think of that idea when we're hanging on to our judgments, like it feels like if I don't hang on to this, if I let it go, that person's going to get away with what they did. But is that even really the case? Right? Is that even really the case? Again, if you just go back, not even so much to how it makes you feel, but that's important, right? Notice the effect it has on your nervous system, the effect it has on your mental and emotional state. And you think if you hold it in mind long enough, that person's going to, get justice. But it just doesn't work like that. It just doesn't work like that. No problems are solved when you hold hatred in your mind, when you hold judgment in your mind, because you're killing yourself. You're literally killing yourself. You think you're killing the other person. You think you're holding them accountable, but you're just hurting yourself. Like, think about it. Notice that next time you're making any kind of judgment about anyone or anything, does it feel good, or does it feel dense? Does it feel heavy? Does it feel like you're keeping yourself imprisoned in this low density state? And the effects of that, because as humans, we do that for decades and decades, and some people do it their entire lives, and they suffer for it, right? Their health suffers, their mental emotional state suffers, their relationships suffer, their bank accounts suffer, because they're not in their most positive state possible, right? But if we decide, okay, I'm going to be loving and positive, so it doesn't mean I'm condoning this person's behavior, not at all, right? We have a legal system, it's there for a reason. But if we say, you know what, despite all that, allow myself to be loving and positive to the best of my ability, I allow myself to let go of disapproving of myself for all the hatred and judgment that I've held on to, and I allow myself to be loving and positive towards myself and towards the others in my dream world here, in my movie that I've created. I allow myself to be loving and positive towards all of them, right? Not to name specific people, but you get the idea. There's certain figures in our history that we deem we're more justified to have hatred towards. But what good does that do? What good does that do? Well, it's so we remember. Forgive but don't forget. But if you're forgiving but not forgetting, you're not forgiving. Right? And you're never going to forget. You're never going to forget. That's not how the human brain is wired, right? When you let go and release something, it just doesn't have the charge anymore. So you don't forget it. I mean, if something negative happened that could have been learned from, and then you release it and now it becomes positive because you're no longer separate from it, you still retain the learning. Like, think like grade 1, grade 2, grade 12, right? Like, there's, you still retain the learning, and you didn't have to hang on to any negative memories about those things in order to retain it. You're relatively neutral about most of the things we learned, and we retain it. And then when we need it again, we'll be reminded of it. That's how the mind works. The mind's a wonderful tool if we allow it to be a tool, but if we allow it to be the master, as so many people do, it runs amok. It runs wild. It doesn't. It's like an untrained horse. That's how the mind is, and we're the master, our higher self, beingness, our God self, as you may put it, the real self. And so we decide, we're the boss, we're in charge. How are we going to direct the mind? So again, your choice. I choose to be loving and positive because I can, because it's just a choice. And just try it. Try to, like, allow yourself to give some love and positivity. Allow yourself to let go of disapproving of whatever's going on. Things going on in the media right now. Can I be loving and positive about that? Can I let go of my disapproval about that? And can I let go more? And even more, and even more. And can I choose to be loving and positive about that? And even more, and more, and more. And it's a gradual thing. You want to build it, right? It's not, it's not necessarily like I choose to be loving and positive and that's it, and I'm done, right? I mean, if you've been the opposite for years and years and years, then just to make that choice one time, maybe you haven't truly made that choice. Maybe you're just granting yourself that experience temporarily, but you have to build it into your neurology permanently. And how do you do that? Practice makes permanent, right? Practice makes permanent. And that's a powerful thing to keep in mind, right? If you continue to practice being positive and loving, then the more you practice it, the more it'll become your natural state. It'll become first nature for you. So when something happens that may have triggered you in the past or enabled you to have some form of judgment or hatred in the past, you don't go there. And you have love and positivity anyway. And you're like, wow, this is my movie. I created the whole thing anyway. I'm 100% responsible for the movie. Therefore, that's what it's all about. Taking that responsibility. And what does that really mean? Choosing to be loving and positive. If you're the director, and you know that the really the only way to solve anything is to be loving and positive. As Albert Einstein said, you can only solve a problem with a higher level of consciousness than what created the problem. That's a higher level of frequency, a higher intelligence. How do you access that higher intelligence? Love and approval. It's not by thinking. Let go of thinking. Allow all of your solutions, all of your answers come from a quiet mind. And I just want to read here Randy again. Gratitude he talks about, and he's grateful for the sharing, and I'm so grateful that Randy is in my life and a connection. And the more we connect with people, not even like-minded people, I mean, that's where we're naturally led through frequency, is to connect with like-minded people, but connecting with people and seeing the reflection of ourselves in everyone and recognizing, hey, if there's negativity that I'm seeing in someone else, that's actually coming from me because it's my projection, it's my thoughts, it's my images that I'm putting on to the screen of the supposed external world. And I mean, I hope to see more of this over time from obviously myself. I'll be producing content on a regular basis, but as Randy's saying here, more people have a wonderful message to share. So I'm encouraging people to try out this hashtag love virus. Why not? Why not? One of my mentors, Donna, today just said, hey, let's allow the love virus, or however she put it. I don't know, but I don't remember exactly. But you get the idea. And that's a great hashtag. There's not a lot of content in there currently, so whatever you can do to contribute to the love virus, let's let that flourish. And the whole concept of a virus itself. And quickly here, even I'll see if I can quickly look up the definition of a virus, because I think we typically have a negative connotation about that. And I don't, I don't know if it's necessarily always a negative thing. A virus, let's see. Okay, so the first definition here with it as a noun talks about the idea of multiplicity. So that's a good thing. I mean, that can be positive or negative, right? You can have a something that multiplies in a positive way or a negative way. So that's interesting. And there's more negative connotations with the definition. But let's see. And maybe I'll do another one on this to see the root of the word and to see if it's really goes back to such a negative connotation. But anyway, who cares? Let's take the word and give it some love and positivity and have the love virus. The virus of love. And that's the idea behind being loving and being positive, and the idea behind spirituality, and of course in miracles it's referred to as the Holy Spirit, which is the whole Spirit, the Spirit of all that is. Collectively, it takes everything that's seemingly separate, everything that's seemingly negative, everything that's seemingly cut off from source power, and it flips it, and it turns it into something positive. It turns it into a form of wholeness. It turns it into a form of connection. And that's where our answers come from. Again, go back in your life and look at all the times you found a solution or a resolution to what was going on. Were you in a peaceful, quiet state? Was it a more of a eureka moment where it just kind of dawned on your mind what the idea was and the solution? Or did you really rack your brain? Did you really beat yourself up and come up with some ideas and then implement and then, oh, that worked, so that's my process. Now I hurt myself to find my answers. Not to say that that process can't help you arrive some way, somehow, but is it the best answer, and is it the most conducive to your longevity and mental and emotional well-being? And further, is that the type of role model that you want to be? Is that what you want to demonstrate to the world? That the way you find answers is you work really hard, you stress yourself out, you beat up your mind, and eventually you get an answer. Often, think about it this way, when we do go through that process, it's often when we kind of give up that. Like we're trying so hard and then we kind of like, oh, I give up. I surrender. And then, boom, the answer comes. Well, what if you could just get quiet immediately? What if you could just get quiet right away and then get the answer? Wouldn't that be easier? and it'd be easier on your whole system, your mind and body, your nervous system, etc. So food for thought there, being loving and positive at all times. Check out the Voice to Spirit group. We're talking about this stuff all the time. Hi there, Carly. Thanks for joining. Vlado, Caitlin. Wonderful people are in my life and in my world, and whether they're viewing this for a few seconds, a few minutes, or the entire broadcast, I'm deeply appreciative that people show up here, and it's all about sharing. It's all about sharing our thoughts. It's all about sharing our message. And as long as our message is coming from a place of wholeness and a place of like, let's connect, let's find solutions, let's allow solutions to manifest themselves. Lester, my ethereal mentor, Lester Levinson, he created something called the butt system, where you literally just sit on your butt and things happen. And we'll see how well that works. I've witnessed it in terms of when I let go and let God, things start to manifest themselves. And my body may be taking action, but it doesn't feel like I'm efforting. It doesn't feel like a lot of mental, emotional, physical efforts going into it. It's more kind of just happening. Even when I do these broadcasts, I kind of get into a state where it's just flowing. And isn't that beautiful? Isn't that a miracle? And no matter how much fear we ever have in life about expressing ourselves, or no matter how much programming we have where we think, something bad's going to happen if I share my thoughts, my ideas, my passions, am I going to disturb people? Am I going to disrupt people in my current environment or out in the world? You always want to be appropriate. You always want to share in an appropriate context. And if there's a message to market match, as my mentor Joel says, then you're in the right place at the right time. But you're always in the right place at the right time. And there doesn't have to be a lot of mental stress in this. You can allow the pieces of the puzzle to come together, and they do come together. And when you're following through from your heart, when you're acting on your deepest passions and what you're truly called to do, things really work out well. It's really only when we're struggling and going against the current, going against the grain. Sure, that can temporarily build up stress, and there can be times where we feel like we're going against the current, but that's usually just a perceptual thing, right? If we get back in the current and we realize, hey, we're actually being guided and that we don't have to fight our way through, right? There's going to be stress anyway, right? Temporarily. And then that stress is just material for releasing. And then eventually there's less and less stress. And then eventually there's no stress. But it's not because we're avoiding circumstances. It's because we're allowing that stress just to move through our system. We're letting it go. We're releasing it. Even right now, if you're watching, and this is kind of a hint, if you actually want to be loving and positive at all times, is can you thought just slipped away, not meant to be shared right now. Thought just slipped away. Maybe it'll come back. I'll keep talking for a few moments here. But really it comes down to a choice. It just comes down to a choice to be loving and positive. And when we go back into that movie director chair and decide, you know what? This is my life, and I decide that things in the world are here for my ultimate good, and that all the things that are potential triggers, I can just release on them. And we start to fortify ourselves in a positive way, not where we need defenses, but in a way where we become like Teflon, and we achieve that state that Lester called imperturbability. And thank you, Carly. Thank you for your synchronicity. Carly's obviously in the right place at the right time, doing the right things. And this is exactly what she needed. And anyone that's here right now watching this, in any capacity, whether it's, again, for a few seconds, few minutes, the entire broadcast, you obviously are here to get something from it, even if it's to decide this isn't for you. It's still a choice. So everything becomes really positive. And we're able to utilize it in that capacity. And we're able to say, you know what? Despite what's going on in the world, despite what's going on in my life, I choose to be loving and positive. I choose to be loving and positive anyway. Just because I can. Love is this infinite ocean, this infinite energy. If you think of God's love, and again, spiritual, religious, or just using this as a concept, even if you're atheist, or even if you don't believe that there's a higher power, the concept of a higher power is that it's this infinite, unlimited being. I mean, I think we can universally agree that that's what it is. I mean, sure, there's some connotations around it maybe being something that punishes us too, but, let's put that entirely aside. That's a different conversation. Let's just assume that higher power means there's, whether you believe in it or not, if it were to be true, it's this unlimited source of power that we can potentially tap into. And we can potentially tap into it in a very unlimited way to whatever capacity we want, whatever capacity we're allowing. And when we allow more and more of that into our lives, that means more energy, more clarity, more certainty, more safety. And it's not coming from the world. It's coming from God. It's coming from the higher intelligence. It's coming from inside of ourselves, from above ourselves, so to speak. But it's not above us in the sense that we're smaller than it. We're equal to it, right? Created in the image of God. And that's interpreted in a lot of different ways. From my perspective, it's just that we have equality to that power, and we have a choice and ability to draw its power into our experience at any given moment. So I allow myself to be loving and positive because it's a choice, because it's an infinite energy that's always there. And I choose to share that because when I share it, it amplifies for me. And of course, in Miracles talks about the idea of generosity, but you can only give away what you have. And when you give it away, it multiplies. So if you feel like you can give something away and then lose it, that's not really generosity, right? That's an egotistical sense. That's the idea that can potentially be a lack. And it feels like there's such a lack in the world at times, but is there really? It seems that way. It seems, I feel the, consciousness of people shouting at me. I feel my own mind shouting at me. Yes, of course, there's lack. But then if you dial it back in, okay, well, what am I really lacking? And if you dial it down in, is it lacking, am I lacking approval? Am I lacking safety and security? Am I lacking control? I feel like an out of control feeling. Am I lacking oneness? Well, aren't those all sensations? Aren't those all those experiences and emotions that we can really just give ourselves? Can we give ourselves a sense of approval? Can we give ourselves approval? Can we give ourselves love? Can we give ourselves a sense of control? Once we prop back up into that movie booth and realize we're the whole director of the show, then that's quite empowering. And then because everything's just a mental image in our mind that we're creating, then projecting out there, if that's true, then all we really have to do is change the image. But how do we do that? Well, we have to first let go of the image that we've been hanging on to for so long. Right? People think that something happened and then that gave me a belief and now I carry that belief, but that's not really how it works. Your unconscious mind already had that image, and then when the thing happened, that was bringing it up to your awareness to say, hey, this thing's in my mind. Can I let it go? Am I willing to let it go right now? Am I willing to let it go right now? Just make that decision. Am I willing to drop the negative images that I've been carrying in my mind? It's your choice because you're the boss, you're the director, right? Your mind's not in charge, right? The real you's in charge. So if you be the authority of your life, meaning you being the author of your life, right? The author, you're authoring your life. If you make that decision that I'm the author of my life, therefore I choose to be loving and positive about whatever, and I choose to let go of all the disapproval about whatever, just imagine how you'll feel lighter, happier, and more free as you do that. Try it out. That's certainly the beginning steps to having and being loving and positive at all times. How to be loving and positive at all times, that is fundamentally the first steps you need. If you even just test that out for yourself, you'll notice a difference. And the entire process to instill that takes practice. It takes hearing it multiple times in multiple different ways. That's why I started the Voice to Spirit community. I was inspired by my fiancée Gail's, her passing. That's what inspired it, but there's so much more to it now. It's expanded in wonderful ways. Sure, we want to give a voice to spirit. We want to give a voice to our higher self, our most authentic self, because then life becomes more enjoyable. And that's really the foundation. But then we can carry that foundation and realize having a voice to spirit, that means a whole nother paradigm of living. That means now I choose to be loving and positive. I don't have to be, but when you have the choice to be one or the other, when you realize it's your choice to be loving and positive, and you realize the benefits that that can give you, mentally, emotionally, physically, in your relationships, etc., that's the powerhouse. That's the powerhouse. So, check us out. Preview the group. The link will be in the comments. As always, much love. I'm Reverend Matthew. It's always my privilege to be sharing with you all, and I look forward to next time. Bye for now.